Okay, I'm here to ask the question, and you guys are going to be changing my mind. And the question is the mass produced, industrial quality produced booze worldwide, don't care what it is, wine, beer, spirits, anything other than just homogenized, blended out garbage? Now, my proposition, standpoint is, it is. It's blended out garbage. In fact, I think that a lot of this stuff you would struggle to know which country you're in. The mass-produced garbage in my hometown of Melbourne is Victoria Bitter, and there's a couple of choice names along with that. And I guess the most polite one would be it's virtual beer. Now, if you cross to the Americans, which I was shit canning last week, things like Budweiser and Coors and Pabst and that it's just water as well. Jump across the ditch to the British, and the average big British brands of beer, garbage. Also, it extends up into the spirits. As an Australian, someone who shops at tiny distilleries in my hometown, I was underwhelmed by British gin, English gin in England, because it's just a dry gin's a dry gin. It's all the same. They have the same size stills, they have the same ingredients, and they've frequently got guys who are doing it just as a job. They rock up at start of shift, they clock out at the end of shift, and as long as the still's humming and nothing's making nasty shrieking, banging, exploding noises, the management doesn't care. And because these gigafactories are after just flogging a product, they just make it as bland and acceptable as possible. And the Americans are guilty of it as well. I think one of the figures for Jack Daniels is it produces over a gigaliter of bourbon a year. It has to move something like 100 million bottles a year to just go on churning it out. And if you are moving literally container shiploads of product a year, you're going to do it in it's just mass appeal. Now, you may have noticed with our food in the West, certainly in Australia, I think is guilty of it. The food's had this shit blended out of it. When I've spent time in Thailand at the turn of the century, back when I was trying to become a monk, you can all stop laughing on that one. The food in Thailand, particularly up in the rural villages where I was up in the northeast, you can actually taste it. When someone put pork into your monastic bowl, you can actually taste the pig, likewise with the chicken and the fish. Whereas here, anyway, I know whether I'm eating a beefsteak or a pig, and that's just texture. And occasionally the smell when it's cooking, because, well, they've got distinct smells, but they don't have any taste. And this is what we've done with the mass-produced alcohol. Hendrick's is a dry gin, and it's not there to offend anyone, because if you offend anyone, your market share is going to drop. And if the market share drops, someone gets fired, someone's career ends, because the factory manager, and that's what the distilleries are, they're factories, they're alcohol factories, he's going to get sacked, which means he more likely won't be able to afford his high-priced boyfriend. And that's just basically my point. All this stuff is had to just homogenize the shit out of it. It doesn't want to offend anyone. And the result is it's just, put a blindfold on and you won't be able to tell the difference. Which is the reason why I actually, if you may have noticed with this channel, I don't go out of my way to buy the big brands as my own drinking. I will stick to the stuff that you can see right there. Now, those three distilleries that my finger's wandering around, and they all produce less than 100 kiloliters a year. In fact, I think they'd be lucky to produce 100 kiloliters combined. And I think that as drinkers, we are obliged to go and put our purchasing power with the small guys, the ones who, if you go to a farmer's market in Victoria, you're likely to actually be dealing with the guy who spent the day distilling it a couple of weeks ago. He's flogging his product. You're talking to the person who actually makes it, the guy who's passionate enough to go and spend, more likely the house mortgage, setting up his distillery. It's not a job for him. It's a passion. And that is the reason why all these micro distilleries routinely slay in the wards. I'm not aware of the last time one of these big factories, alcohol factories, actually won an award on anything. Convince me. Tell me I'm wrong. Go and cite, Jack Daniels' last 20 awards that wasn't given by Jack Daniels. Again, I'm happy to be told. Tell me when's the last time Hendrix actually produced something that was worth drinking. Or Löwenbräu in Germany, when was the last time they produced a beer that wasn't anything other than kidney exercise? But all these small distilleries all do. They go out because they're driven by passionate, loud, enthusiastic people who don't blend the shit out of it. Every distiller I've met in Melbourne is out there and he's trying to put in the edge in a crowded market to make sure that I actually go and drink it. I go and buy his stuff because he knows that in Melbourne alone, there's something like 20 distilleries, which is not a bad population ratio. We've got about 5.5, 6 million people here. We've got 20 or 30 distilleries alone, and then easily as many breweries. So the guy who's making the local beer that I'll go and drink, he's trying something different. He's trying something a bit edgy. I mean, I know someone who makes maple bacon flavored beer. Maple bacon flavored beer. It's delicious. But he more likely produces less in a year than Budweiser would spill in the average week. They'd write off more in bad brews than this guy's going to produce in the next 10 years in the average week. And that's the reason why my contention is this mass-produced stuff is just simple garbage. It's not worth our time or money. Go and spend your money with the guy who put the house on the line to produce something that he is passionate about, and often is everything from the CEO right down to the secretary who answers the phone. Hi. So thank you very much. Let's argue this point out, and I'll catch you guys later.